like I mentioned before, if you happen to be the type of person in which you're looking for a brand new cold storage solution, I do want to show you guys this real quick. It won't take too long. I did go with, for instance, Decent. I will mention it at least maybe once or twice a week or something like that. But basically speaking, here it is. And you do get a discount if you choose to go this route. The link is in the description. I don't do this much. You guys know me, right? But it is the new solution I went with. I still use a ledger, but for the most part, I'm looking more towards going almost all the way with Decent. I like it. It's easy to use. The whole 24 word, C phrase doesn't take too long, but it's just a lot more user friendly compared to going with the ledger. But nonetheless, definitely check it out. If that's something that you're interested in. Some of you guys have asked me, obviously, for the longest time, which one do you go with, Max? In the past was ledger. I have to say, I'm going with the Decent wallet. So this is for one, if that's your thing. Again, the links is in the description for the live show, even recorded videos you see chopped up later on. And if you're the type of guy that wants to get, for instance, a 2x package, you do save a little bit more. Maybe you and your wife or whoever, right? So there's this one here, and once again, links isn't basically in the description. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to go and show you what I'm talking about. The Jasmy Q4 lockup. We have to keep in mind that Japan's fourth quarter is different from the Western world. Har has addressed this. A few other members of our community have addressed this. I want to give you guys kind of an idea of this. It's not necessarily so much of a, hey, here's the brand new update and I got exclusive news. But if anything, I want to alleviate some of maybe the worry or maybe miscommunication that's been out there. Nothing against members of the community, but sometimes you know how it goes. Information passes and it just needs to be straightened out. So let's get into some of this. And basically speaking, you got to keep in mind, like I said, the fourth quarter is different for Japan compared to the Western world. But that said, what new information do we have in regards to Jasmy's fourth quarter lockup? Or is there even any particular information at all? Basically speaking, you got to keep in mind that specific fourth quarter, if you're wondering about the specifics, runs from April 1st to roughly March. It's like March 31st, April 1st, that particular area. And, the fourth quarter is definitely relevant to Jasmy's lockup. But basically, here's a rundown. So if you're wondering what confirmed details have we had, I did go through, various different channels, Reddit, Twitter, X, checked out some other, members of our community and so on. But the timeline for the lockup period actually originally began what was supposed to be October 2023. That's already come to pass, and it's expected to last to, for example, like March, give or take. Now, some people have stated, how can that be? I haven't seen anything in that regard. You got to keep in mind, this doesn't align with Japan's fiscal year, I should say, Q4, that ends supposedly March 31st, April 1st, give or take. What is the purpose of all this? Well, the primary focus and purpose of this, of the lockup, is to reduce the circulating supply of the Jasmy tokens. If you guys have seen lately, I think we're at either close to 99% or right at it. We almost got a full amount into circulation, and basically that's going to create a potential upward pressure on the token's price. So people say, well, it doesn't really matter because we're going to be going to like a V2, go into, for instance, the migration to the new was Optimism, this layer 2 blockchain solution for Jasmy. Even on the storage solution, a little bit different, right? With was it Polkadot layer 0? But the point is, it will affect Jasmy's token price, and it will incentivize long-term holding, right? For me, Jasmy is a long-term hold. I'm not really worried about it, but people mention this. If you're wondering about the functionalities of this, it is as an alternative to token burning mechanisms. As we know, there actually is a token burning mechanism in regards to Jasmy, but they never utilized it. Think about that. You're seeing other projects that are solid, good solid project for the most part. I'm not bashing Luna Classic. I'm in the Luna Classic and so on. But if you got something solid, you don't necessarily need to do that. It's kind of like having the power to do something, but they haven't utilized it. Some people agree with this, some people don't. Um, but in regards to these locked tokens, okay, let's talk about this for a second. So some of the notes that I gathered and so on was that the specific amount of these tokens locked up hasn't been officially disclosed by Jasmy Labs. When I say Jasmy Labs, we know that that's Hara's portion of things. However, there is some estimates that suggest it could be a significant portion of the total circulating supply. Some of you guys don't want to necessarily hear that. You want me to give you something like, hey, ingrained into stone, this is what it is. I'm just basing off what I see. Don't shoot the messenger. But of course, a lot of you guys got some speculation when it comes to this. I mean, heck, we talk about a lot of things that are speculative, right? Like XRP to the moon. But the impact on price can very well be significant. But again, a lot of speculation. So this lockup period could very well contribute to price increases that we're all hoping for. Jasmy, basically, as the available supply diminishes, the overall market conditions and adoptions within Jasmy ecosystem could play also a significant role. And this is one thing I do want to point out. You do see more of the whole thing of new partnerships that are coming about. Whether people like me talking about carbon credits and so on, understand the whole thing that they got with the NCCC, right? The National, was it Carbon Credit Consortium? So that's utility in motion. There is new information in regards to some, but not a lot when it comes to the lockup. And that is basically, the developments of the Jasmy ecosystem, the such partnerships that are involved. If there's any like specific platform advancements, all for the most part that has stayed the same, but it doesn't necessarily indirectly influence the impact of a lockup, right? There is, of course, market sentiment about this whole thing, different opinions. Some people are like, man, we need to see like 25% lockup or more for, significant impact of Jasmy. Teaches them when it comes to that. But some people do look at the lockup as being a positive sign of long-term commitment. Others, of course, have expressed in the, Jasmy Twitter community and so on, and even in some of these spaces that there's concerns about the decrease. When that happens, is going to lead to decreased liquidity. I could agree to disagree with that, but definitely worth pointing out. Some things I want to mention to you guys is that while we don't have a lot of information about this, there's been plenty of discussions, and while it's not clear cut in regards to the increments of like, is it 5% and 10%, and then after the halving, is it this specific percent? It's not clear cut, and there's different sources that provide different details, but in reality, I think the only guys that really know are going to be Hara and the rest of the Jasmy management team. But there's a few things to consider, and that is the lockup started in January 2024 because back in October, like I said, I'm sorry if I misquoted that, they delayed that, right? So that involves a significant portion of the circulating supply being removed from active trading for a set period. Is it a set period before we get to the V2? We'll find out more information about that hopefully soon, maybe in the next Jasmy space from Hara and what's her name, Moonlight. I don't know, but there is different lockup periods, and they exist for different categories of different tokens, not just Jasmy. But while there's longer durations that are typically associated with larger token stakes, keep in mind Jasmy's tokenomics are way different from the norm. Back to the topic about Jasmy for a second. The overall effect of the lockup, if you're wondering about it, like especially if you're new, what is the intention of all this? Basically, is to reduce token liquidity and potentially create upward pressure on price. That simply makes sense. Supply and demand kicking in, like we've always mentioned. If you create something in which there's not as much of a huge supply, that's good. And also having the token simply being used for the utility that's meant for, like personal data lockers and all the other things that they're looking to contribute towards data democratization, finance democracy, and so on. But the specific increments, I try to look more into this myself. You guys know I do some of these things. I look into like the white paper and stuff like that. I didn't see anything specific in regards to, hey, this was mentioned in the original white paper or update for the white paper or anything like that, that explicitly broke down the lockup increments for different categories. If that was something that you were hoping I was going to deliver to you tonight, hey, I'm not going to make stuff up. I would never do that. That'd be ridiculous. So didn't see anything about that. I did go thoroughly through it and so on. Spent literally an hour and a half trying to find some information. Didn't have that. Back to the whole topic of community discussions. Some of you guys are very, very active in the Jasmy community, and rightfully so. But you got to keep in mind that some of these discussions mention like increments like 25%, 50%, 75% lockups, and even I've seen some ones higher, especially like over on Reddit and so on. But you got to keep in mind lockup periods ranging from 6 months to 3 years, right? And for me, when I think about that, I'm thinking to myself, well, we were in 2023 when we were first mentioning lockups, at least that I can recall, significant lockups, right? So the 3-year mention does kind of align with the KPI metrics of the $17 plus Jasmy, $17 plus, was it 780? Something like that. I can't remember. We'll pull that up, but at least $17 KPI metrics, which sounds nuts, right? Like a lot of projects don't really come out with figures like that. But again, 2023 going to 2026. 2026 is supposed to be the KPI target of $17 plus. So could that be accurate? Or is there somebody out there that knows something that we don't? I don't necessarily think that's the case, other than Hara. But these details, of course, lack formal confirmation and could be just interpretations of somebody's opinion or estimates. There's nothing solid in stone in that regard. What I recommend to everybody, hence maybe why you're here tonight, is always go with the official sources. You see Jasmine management from their official Twitter, or X, I should say, mention anything about it, I would go with that. Hara, I would go with that, right? There's community resources. We understand that there's members of, the Jasmy ambassadors, I should say. I would probably take what they would say. I mean, especially like Jesse, KR Finance, we know he is a ambassador. I don't know if he could release anything about it, but I'm sure you would have heard about it by now. There's, of course, you, me, everybody else in regards to independent research, but you got to keep in mind, I know a lot of you guys have been DMing me like crazy about this. I'm not saying I got like 100 DMs, but there's at least about 8 of you guys recently are like, come on, man, I need something about this whole thing. Don't have all the details yet. So just be aware of this, right? If you're not the type of person that checks Twitter all the time, it's there and it's being mentioned. And I'm sure we'll hear more about this and so on. But one thing I do want to bring up to you guys is a little bit more details from just that, the community. So here it is. Here's some visuals. Let's get into it. And basically speaking, here it is straight from Jasmy US. Talks about originally, this is, some of the recent ones. I had to give you guys something somewhat recent. You may feel as though November is not recent. Just hear me out, right? Don't shoot the messenger on this one. So it shows here that the Jasmy token lockup, as we know, like I mentioned before, does replace a burn mechanism, even though that burn net mechanism has never been used ever. It will begin April 2024. Like I mentioned, I thought it was either March 31st or April, so that matches. Japanese fiscal year ends March 31st, so that would be the end of their 4th quarter, right? That's where we get that term. Here's the official thing from, Hara originally. He mentioned this on November 10th. He says, until March, we would like to improve the utility of ERC20 tokens by locking up and moving them to a wallet on our consortium chain. Yeah, hence you're going to see some things, big things happen in regards to the layer 2. We understand that we've been there and we've done that, right? Going back to the whole thing from Mr. Jasmy Management. Let me pull this up for a second. So yeah, a lot of you guys already seen this. Some people say, keep buying. Here's another one, and for whatever reason, when I tried to click on the link for it, it came up with a broken URL. So I do apologize in regards to having to use a cached one on this, but you know me, I get kind of creative about this. So I don't know where this is originally at, if it was either from Twitter or it was from Reddit, But yes, you guys are familiar with Dip Metaverse. It was in regards to the conversation with Haro way back when. I think it's just the picture of the whole thing. I did see Icy Amphibian chiming in on this, and that's why I wanted to share this with you. So this guy asked 15 days ago, general question about the Q4 lockup. Why don't they know at this point in time how much will they lock up? Right. Fair question. Everybody's asking about it. He says, isn't this important? Oh, this is from Snoo Hobbies. That's the guy's name. Isn't this important, and should this be part of the business plan? It's not a last minute decision. Do you have any thoughts or information on this, and where are we going in the near future with the topic? Right. We're all expecting, gains, the bull run, yada yada. Right. So Icy, member of community, great guy. He does respond to this, and he says the Q4 lockup is March 2024 on Japanese schedule. He's sure they have no idea on how many tokens that will lock up, but they are not sharing that information yet. So that right there tells me if Icy doesn't have it, then nobody really does. It says in the near future, they are launching the platform. They will focus on expansion of PDLs, as we know, personal data lockers, through device penetration. Look at the Jasmine patents, and I would look more into that compared to any FUD that you've been hearing lately. Price targets, like we talked about with the whole thing of the KPIs, keep in mind, this is a valid point that IC Amphibian makes. They have not shared price expectations, and I prefer, as in what he's saying from IC, I prefer it as a way to keep the SEC away. That is very, very true. Because, sometimes some things kind of fly under Gensler's radar and so on. Maybe it's not a good idea to fully mention all that stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like you look at Jasmy, and if it gets looked at the wrong way, it might tick off somebody. And instead of the innovation zone or monitoring zone, it's like you don't want to cross the wrong person. It's literally that bad when it comes to this. We've been there, we've done that, right? This guy obviously says, basically, hey, positive news. Thank you for sharing that. He feels as though that Jasmy has great, strong developers. Icy responds. He thinks that Jasmy has approximately 100 employees, give or take. There are also multiple engineering devs teams finishing the AI engine, and that is one thing. Even though it's not on the subject of a Q4 lockup, you should never forget about that. Understand quality, right? When we talk about Tadashi Morita, right, he really, really stands out. Very well respected, well admired, well-known figure in Japan that's part of the Jasmy, team. Who, man, I mean, he is probably the premier leader when it comes to the actual tech side of things, as far as specific patents and contributing to the AI engine and so on. They also have powerful connections, as we know, through Bajit. We've done enough deep dives about this. So this is another question, and I think some of you guys asked this, so I don't want to read all of this, but this is a good question. This guy, a different guy, says 14 days ago, he says, dumb question, where do you think they get the lockup tokens? I mean, if only 100 million are left, do they come from that? Sorry, dumb question. I mean, it's not a dumb question. Any question's valid. And I love IC's response. He's like, there are no dumb questions, right? This stuff is very complicated for most of us here. It sounds very, very complicating, right? So it says the tokens that are participating or those companies want to lock up will come from the market. That means that all the companies have to buy it from a legit crypto exchange themselves, also known as buying from holders. And then, of course, another legitimate question, then why release them in the first place, right? Like, I could literally see some of you guys in the comments right now saying the same thing, like, why even do it in the first place? Great question, right? Look what Icy says, coming in with the clutch, as usual. Larger circulating supply can reduce price volatility in the future. I would agree with that. Jasmy Incorporated plans on their network going global, true. So they wanted to maintain the 50 billion max supply, so there's enough Jasmy for users to acquire. The tokenomics of different cryptos can determine how the project raises funds and operates while still building the startup company. I think that's a legitimate answer, and I would have to agree with that. Do I have anything more in regards to this? Well, yes. But it's in regards to KPI, not necessarily so much about the whole thing of the lockup. So we did mention the whole thing about KPI. Tim Shea sent me a DM a few days about this. I did see it in the past, but I do want to give credit to Tim. He's like, did we ever talk about this? Possibly, just briefly, right? But we'll talk about it again. Jasmy, like it says, does have 3 KPIs. Were you aware of that? Well, it's a little blurry. It's a screenshot that somebody took with a bad phone or something. But it says Jasmy aims to achieve KPIs for the following 3 indicators. Listen to this, because some people just have never seen it. Active users, amount of data lockers. Sounds nuts, but 107 million are part of that KPI target. They aim to have 7 million active users in Japan and 100 million overseas. When was that originally posted? I know it's hard to see, but underneath that, unless you're really looking close at your screen, you're like a little kid, like looking at the screen all super close, right? Says basically February 1st of 2021 is when they originally released this. All right. What about the value of data per capita? Now, this is, again, at that time. Things have changed, as we know. It says $500. We consider the total amount of revenue that the accumulated data will earn in the future as the data value per person and aim for a value of $500. What about this other part? PDR, Jasmy coin price divided by, what is it, data value multiplier or slash? So 16.7x. It says PDR, we will adopt market capitalization of Jasmy coin divided by, okay, so that was correct, divided by the data value of the platform as our own index, aiming for 16.7x. So it's not like they just pulled this out of thin air, if anybody's wondering about that. There's the formula that you see here, and it basically shows PDR price, data, value ratio, 16.7x divided by, which equals, was it Jasmy coin market capitalization, total user data value in the platform. Number 1, price market times market circulation supply. And then this other one, number of active users, as in the personal data lockers, the PDL, times data value per user. 16.7 equals, again, the top part, price 50 billion, because we know that 3 6 9 zeros and the number in front of it is a billion. So that would be 50 billion divided by 107 million times 500 from the value of data per capita. What is the price target? $17.80. I know it sounds crazy. Some people are like, these guys are dreaming. There's just no way. Well, you know something? A lot of us have been wrong about a lot of stuff in the past, have we not been? And there's harsh criticisms about Jasmy or Japan not focused enough about marketing. They've already been there and done that with the whole thing with Sony. But look what happened. Quality products. And you say what you want. They delay things. They don't release things when you and I want them to be released. Maybe that's a good thing. Instead of, rushing to market with something broken, build something for quality. Maybe that's what's going on with this layer 2. I don't have the answers, but I would kind of lean towards that. And even with the whole Web3 cloud solution on Polkadot, right? So I just thought I would share that briefly with you guys. I know it's not a lot, but I think we talked about it for a bit. And if anything, maybe kind of give you an idea of what could happen, what is happening. Maybe you didn't know about some of those things. Maybe you knew about all those things. But whatever the case be, I don't want to ignore a community and just be like, oh, don't want to talk about it. We talked about it. There it is. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if anything, have you heard something that I don't know about? You can share that too.